The blood was still warm when it started seeping through the seat cushion, and that's when I realized my passenger had been dead for the last 20 minutes. I should have known something was wrong when he got in without saying a word, when his skin felt like ice despite the summer heat, when he gave me an address that didn't exist. But you don't question a 5-star ride request at 3 a.m. in a city like Millbrook, not when you're 3 months behind on rent and your car's making that grinding noise that means expensive repairs. You just drive, keep your mouth shut, and pray they tip well. I wish I had listened to that voice in my head telling me to cancel the ride. My name's Jake, and I've been driving for Uber in Millbrook for 2 years now. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills. Usually. Millbrook's one of those mid-sized cities that thinks it's bigger than it has tall enough buildings to block out the stars, busy enough streets to make parking a nightmare, but small enough that you start recognizing the same faces after a while, the late-night crowd especially. Club hoppers, hospital workers getting off shift, people with nowhere else to go and money for a ride. That night started like any other. I'd been online since 6 p.m., grinding through the dinner rush, airport runs, couple dates, the usual stuff. By 2 a.m., I was thinking about calling it quits when the ping came through. 5-star passenger rating, surge pricing active. The pickup location was downtown, near the old financial district where half the buildings stand empty and the streetlights flicker like dying fireflies. I should have paid attention to how quiet the streets were as I drove there. Even for a Tuesday night, Millbrook usually has some life in it. Police sirens in the distance, teenagers hanging around the 24-hour convenience stores, at least a few other Uber drivers circling the bar district. But that night, nothing. Just empty asphalt stretching under broken streetlights, and the kind of silence that makes you check if your radio's still working. The pickup spot was in front of an old office building, one of those Art Deco places from the 1940s that looks impressive during the day but turns sinister after dark. I pulled up and waited, engine idling, scrolling through my phone to kill time. That's when I noticed something weird in my peripheral vision. The building's lobby lights were on, but they were wrong somehow. Too bright, too white. Like the fluorescence in a hospital morgue. A tap on my passenger window made me jump. The guy standing there looked normal enough, middle-aged, wearing a decent suit, clean-shaven. But when I unlocked the doors and he slid into the back seat, that's when the temperature in my car dropped about 10 degrees. I cranked up the heat, figuring my AC was acting up again. "Where to?" I asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. He didn't answer right away. Just stared out the window like he was watching something I couldn't see. Finally, he spoke in this voice that sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. 1247 Sycamore Street. I punched it into my GPS, but nothing came up. "Hey, I'm not finding that address. You sure about the street name?" "It's there," he said. "Just drive north." The way he said it, there was something final about it, like arguing would be pointless, so I shifted into drive and headed north, figuring we'd sort it out when we got closer. But as we left downtown and entered the residential areas, something felt off about the whole city. The houses we passed looked too dark, too empty. No porch lights, no glow from television screens through curtains. Even the street signs looked different, older somehow, like they'd been there longer than they should have been. "So, what brings you out so late?" I tried making conversation, the way I always do. Most passengers appreciate the small talk, helps them feel safer getting into a stranger's car. He didn't respond. When I checked the rearview mirror, he was still staring out the window, but now I could see his reflection more clearly. His eyes were completely black. Not just dark brown or shadowed by the dim light black like looking into deep water at night. My hands started shaking on the steering wheel. I told myself it was just the lighting, just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. But then I noticed something else. He wasn't breathing. I watched his chest for a full minute as we drove through an intersection. and there was no movement at all. "Are you feeling all right back there?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "Turn left on Maple." There was no Maple Street on my GPS, but sure enough, there was a street sign coming up on the left, Maple Street, just like he said. The sign looked old, older than the others, like it had been weathered by decades of storms. I turned, and immediately the neighborhood changed. The houses here were different Victorian-style homes with wraparound porches and bay windows that reflected our headlights like watching eyes. That's when I started to panic. I'd lived in Millbrook my whole life, driven every street in this city at least a dozen times. There was no Maple Street in this part of town. There were no Victorian houses north of downtown. This wasn't Millbrook anymore. "Listen, I think we're lost," I said, pulling over to the curb. "Let me just reset my GPS and keep driving." The temperature in the car dropped again. I could see my breath fogging in the air, and frost was starting to form on the edges of my windshield. I reached for the door handle, thinking maybe I should get out, call the cops, figure out what the hell was happening, but my hand wouldn't move. It was like my muscles had stopped responding to my brain. "Keep driving, Jake." I never told him my name. With no choice but to obey, I pulled back onto the street and continued deeper into this impossible neighborhood. The Victorian houses gave way to something even older, colonial-style homes with weathered shingles and stone foundations that looked like they'd been built before the city existed. Some of them had lights in the windows, but the glow was wrong. Too yellow, too flickering, like candlelight instead of electricity. "Almost there," my passenger said, and for the first time, I heard something like satisfaction in his voice. That's when I saw the first one, a figure standing on a front porch, perfectly still, watching our car drive by. As we passed under a streetlight, I got a clear look at it. Human-shaped, but wrong in ways that made my eyes water. Its arms were too long, hanging almost to the ground. Its head was tilted at an angle that would have broken a person's neck. And its eyes were the same bottomless black as my passenger's. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "He's not here," my passenger said, and I swear I could hear him smiling. More figures appeared as we drove deeper, standing in doorways, sitting on porch swings, walking along the sidewalks with that same impossible stillness, all of them watching our car. All of them with those terrible black eyes. I realized I was hyperventilating, my vision starting to blur around the edges. "Please," I said. "Please, I just want to go home. I have a family. I have 1247 Sycamore Street," he interrupted. "Right there." The house looked exactly like all the other Stu stories. White clapboard siding, black shutters, but something about it felt different, heavier, like it was pressing down on reality itself. The front yard was overgrown with grass that moved without any wind, and the windows were dark except for one on the second floor where a pale yellow light flickered. My passenger opened the door and stepped out, but he didn't close it behind him. Cold air rushed into the car, carrying a smell I couldn't identify, something sweet and rotten, like flowers left too long in water. "Aren't you coming, Jake?" I wanted to slam the car into reverse, floor it back toward the main road, but my foot wouldn't move to the gas pedal. Instead, I found myself turning off the engine and stepping out into the freezing night air. The silence here was complete. No insects, no distant traffic, no sound at all except my own ragged breathing. The passenger was already walking up the front path, his movement too smooth, like he was gliding instead of walking. I followed, each step feeling like I was walking through thick mud. The porch steps creaked under my weight, but made no sound when he stepped on them. He knocked on the front door 3 times, and it swung open immediately. The interior was dark except for that flickering light coming from upstairs, but I could make out a staircase leading up and a hallway stretching back into shadows. "After you," he said, gesturing for me to enter first. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't. My legs carried me forward into the house, my passenger close behind. The smell was stronger inside that sweet rot mixed with something metallic that made my stomach turn. The floorboards groaned under my feet, and I could hear movement somewhere in the walls, like things crawling behind the plaster. "Upstairs," he said. The staircase was narrow and steep, the kind you'd find in a house built 2 centuries ago. Each step felt like it might collapse under my weight, but I kept climbing because I had no choice. Behind me, my passenger made no sound at all, like he was floating up after me. The second-floor hallway stretched longer than it should have, lined with doors that were all slightly ajar. Through the gaps, I could see rooms filled with furniture covered in white sheets, like a museum of abandoned lives. But it was the smell coming from behind those doors that made me gag that same sweet rot, but stronger now, mixed with the unmistakable stench of decay. "Last door on the right," my passenger said. The room at the end of the hall was different from the others. The door was wide open, and warm yellow light spilled out into the hallway. Inside, I could see what looked like a normal bedroom, dresser, a chair by the window, but when I stepped inside, I realized the walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them, all showing the same thing. People getting into cars, people sitting in back seats, people looking scared and confused as they drove through impossible neighborhoods. They were all Uber drivers, and in every photo, sitting behind them in the back seat, was my passenger. "You're not the first," he said, appearing beside me so suddenly that I stumbled backward. "Won't be the last, either. Millbrook has a way of expanding when it needs to. New streets, new houses, new residents." I spun around to face him, and that's when I saw what he really was. His skin was translucent now, showing the dark veins underneath. His eyes weren't just black, they were empty, like looking into holes in the world. When he smiled, his teeth were too sharp, too many, arranged in rows like a shark's. "The ride isn't over yet, Jake." The room began to change around us. The walls stretched upward until they disappeared into darkness, and the floor tilted at impossible angles. The photographs on the walls started moving, showing the driver's final moments in jerky, stuttering motion. I could hear their screams echoing from somewhere far away. That's when I understood. This wasn't just a haunted house or some supernatural trap. This was a collection. Every driver who'd taken this ride, who'd followed the same route I had, was still here somewhere, trapped in this place that existed between the streets of the real Millbrook and somewhere else entirely. "Please," I said again, hating how my voice broke. "I don't want to die." "Who said anything about dying?" The thing that had been my passenger laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Death would be too simple, too final. We prefer recruitment." The room spun around me, and suddenly I was back in my car, but everything was wrong. The interior was older, more worn. The radio was playing a song I'd never heard, in a language I didn't recognize. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw my own face staring back, but my eyes were completely black. "New ride request," a voice said from my phone, but the phone looked different too. Older, with buttons instead of a touchscreen. Pickup location, 40, Twund and Broadway. Passenger rating, 5 stars. I tried to refuse, tried to turn off the app, tried to throw the phone out the window, but my hands moved on their own, accepting the ride, starting the engine, pulling away from the curb. In the back seat, I could feel someone sitting there, but when I looked in the mirror, it was empty. "Where to?" I heard myself ask, the words coming out without my permission. "Just drive north," said a voice from the back seat, a familiar voice, my voice. That's when I realized the truth. I wasn't the driver anymore, I was the passenger. The thing in the back seat, wearing my face, speaking with my voice, that was the real me, or what I was becoming. The thing behind the wheel, The thing that looked like me but felt hollow inside, that was just the collection's newest tool. I've been riding in the back of my own car for, I don't know how long now. Time works differently here in this version of Millbrook. Sometimes we pick up real passengers, people who get in thinking they're just catching a late-night ride home. Sometimes we drive through the real city, and I try to scream warnings but no sound comes out. Other times, we cruise through that impossible neighborhood with the Victorian houses and the watching figures, making deliveries I don't understand to places that shouldn't exist. The worst part is watching myself, the thing wearing my face, get better at the job. It's learned to make small talk, to adjust the radio to whatever the passenger likes, to take the most efficient routes through the city. It gives perfect service, maintains a 5-star rating, never raises suspicion, and every night it gets a little more human, while I get a little less. But tonight is different. Tonight I can feel something changing. The collection is growing impatient with small-scale operations. I've heard them talking, the other passengers, the other stolen drivers, the things that run this place. They're planning something bigger, an expansion. Instead of collecting drivers one by one, they want to take the whole city, turn every ride into a trap, every street into a hunting ground. I can't let that happen. I won't let them do to others what they did to me. So I'm fighting back the only way I can. Right now, as my doppelganger drives through the real Millbrook picking up another innocent passenger, I'm using every ounce of strength I have left to send out this message, to warn people, to let them know that not every ride request is safe, not every driver is human, and not every street leads where it's supposed to. If you're reading this, if you drive for any rideshare company in Millbrook or any city where the streets seem to change when you're not looking, remember these rules. Never accept a ride to an address that doesn't show up on your GPS. Never trust a passenger who won't tell you their name. If the temperature in your car drops for no reason, end the ride immediately. And if you ever find yourself driving through a neighborhood you've never seen before, with houses that look too old and people who stand too still, turn around. Don't think about it. Don't try to rationalize it. Just turn around and drive back the way you came as fast as you can. I wish someone had told me these rules 2 years ago. Maybe I'd still be alive. Maybe I'd still be me. The passenger just got in. A young woman, probably heading home from a late shift at the hospital. She looks tired, grateful for the ride. She has no idea what's about to happen to her, no idea that the driver she's trusting with her life isn't really human anymore. I'm trying to warn her, screaming in the back seat, but she can't hear me. No one ever can. If you made it this far, if you believed any of this story, then do me a favor, share it, tell people. Make sure the word gets out about what's happening in Millbrook and places like it. Hit that like button if you want to help spread awareness, leave a comment if you've experienced anything similar, and subscribe because there are more stories like this, stories that need to be told before it's too late. The collection is counting on people not believing, not sharing, not caring about the warnings. Don't let them win. My name was Jake, and I was an Uber driver in Millbrook. Now I'm something else entirely, and I'm not the only one.